I'm Lucy and I have 4 children. My third child, Brecken, is 16 and has a rare chromosome disorder, which results in him having kind of severe uncontrolled epilepsy. He's now got osteoporosis because of the drugs that he needed to take for the epilepsy. He's had lots of fractures. He has severe learning difficulties. He's nonverbal. He's got autism and he's massively whirlwindy ADHD. Lockdown was horrendous. Awful. You know, we work so hard for our world not to be tiny with when we have a young person who has significant needs, because obviously you're massively limited by their needs on where you can go and what things you can access, and all of that is taken away from you when you have a child with significant needs, and so you work really hard to expand your world all the time. Lockdown shut our world right down again. Brecken is, you need eyes on constantly, because he has this kind of a lethal mix of zero understanding of danger and awareness, zero ability to communicate in a kind of universal way, and he can have a seizure at any given moment. You know, there's no warning, and he can fall. So you need to be eyes on all the time with him, like within arm's reach. Brecken got really poorly with seizures and then ended up in a coma in paediatric ICU in Southampton.
Things changed in the sort of 6 months to a year after that.
I think during lockdown, it just intensified and concentrated the issues that we were having anyway. So I think it just became a lot more apparent that actually this is not doable in a family context, because Brecken needed so much care and input. I've always wanted to be the best mum I can be for all my children. And having Brecken in the home context I was not able to do that for anybody. So we found a provision that said that they could cope with the epilepsy, that he'd have 24/7 monitoring, that they would be able to give him what he needed in terms of a 24-hour waking curriculum. So at 14, he transitioned into that provision. He seemed quite happy. I mean, the one good thing about Brecken is he's amazing at transitions. As long as somebody's there meeting his needs, he's quite happy, which is a huge blessing. About I don't know how many weeks, few weeks in, we started to see some issues, and then eventually Brecken was in a PE lesson on a piece of equipment that he shouldn't have been on, that wasn't risk assessed for the lesson and didn't have a crash mat underneath, and he wasn't being supervised appropriately, and there wasn't the right ratio of staff in the room, and he had a tonic seizure and fell and significantly broke his hip. He was in hospital for about 3 months in a spiker. So this child went from being chaos and crazy and like didn't stop moving to then being in a spiker, not able to move, but still trying, with zero understanding of this whole thing. And then we were faced with, what do we do next? We had a place in Cornwall lined up, and they were amazing, and they decided to come down to where we were and support with Brecken's rehabilitation. So we were essentially kind of training them at our home, and off he went to that provision a couple of months later. And for the most part, again, Brecken's fine. He's like happy. People are meeting his needs. It's all good, as far as he's concerned. But actually it hasn't been the waking curriculum that we wanted. So there's such conflicting emotions going on. Like a lot of, well, he shouldn't be there, he should be with us. Knowing full well that he couldn't be with us because we couldn't give him the appropriate support he needed. I think a major issue for me regarding trust, because obviously we're trusting the second residential now, with a child that in the first residential provision allowed to be broken. That may or may not have happened anyway, but from a parental perspective, he was never broken in our care, and then suddenly he goes to residential and he's broken. So that is really hard to handle. So I think we're starting from a really low level of trust at this point. And we were honest about that with the second provision. And I think the things that have been good are things like we have a meeting weekly with the residential home manager, and she is very open to us saying, these are the things that we've noticed this week that haven't maybe been great. These are the ways we think we can fix that. So a lot of collaborative working, a lot of partnership working, those things have been really good. I think the tricky thing is when you have those conversations and then you have those conversations with the management, but then those things aren't necessarily filtered down to the people on the ground. So that's difficult, because we can have all the conversations with the management, but actually if nothing changes on the ground, those conversations feel completely fruitless and pointless. So
it's meaning what you say and seeing that in action.
Yeah, meaning what you say and making sure that the right people have the right information. So when it was me at home, I made the decisions, I lived with the consequences, it was on me. But now I'm having to navigate a whole set of other people, which is constantly changing as well. There's lots of issues around that. There's the high turnover of staff. So making sure that I have key contacts and people that I trust, that like the social worker goes down once every 6 weeks, which is great. He doesn't have any health colleagues going down. He doesn't have any education colleagues going down, keeping the provision accountable to what they said that they would do. So that becomes my job, which shouldn't be my job, because when it's my job, I then become the pain in the arse. I get labelled as the difficult parent, and that relationship breaks down. I felt the need, because I'd said again and again in a polite, nice way, and nothing's changed. I felt the need that to make a formal complaint, essentially, to the local authority, because that was the only thing that I felt like I could do to effect some change. And as a result of that, the current provision served notice on him. I had tried all the nice routes. I had done all the collaborative partnership working. I'd talked to the professionals. I'd tried to mobilise the professionals to go and hold the provision to account, all of those things. So I think what would have needed to happen was I would have needed to have felt like the professionals whose job it is to hold the provision to account were listening to me and hearing me and saying, yes, like, we understand this and this. And even if they couldn't, even if they felt like they couldn't do anything about that, actually just feeling heard and having the conversation where they say to me, you know what, I completely hear what you're saying. It's a rubbish situation, but actually we need to keep the peace at this point, because that's the most important thing given the situation we're in. Just those transparent conversations, that would have made things different.
Being heard and then having clear action points and a timeline.
I don't want to be that person. You know, it's not my first go-to by any stretch of the imagination. It's the last resort. And I think that maybe is missed by professionals when parents make a complaint. They're like, oh, they're one of those parents. Actually, think about what's happened to and I deal with this in my professional role as an assistant educational psychologist, with people making complaints to EHCPs, tribunals, all that stuff. And the narrative around it is, oh, they're one of those parents, they've gone to tribunal. But actually, that's a last resort for them. They would have gone through 1,000 other things before they got to that point, and they would have felt forced into doing that. And